So I now have the pleasure of introducing today's speaker, Kyle Mishima from Rotate 123, Solo Stats 123. His complete biographical information can be found in the convention program. Please join me in welcoming Kyle.
Okay, let's just do a quick survey. How many of you are high school coaches? And how many are club coaches? And how many of you are college coaches sneaking out of meetings? Okay. So, we knew that there are a lot of college meetings going on simultaneously with this. So this is primarily geared for the high school club audiences, but every time I've done a presentation, I've always ended up with about 40% college audiences. So we'll see how it goes for you. They really weren't supposed to talk about the product stuff, and I should probably get rid of the shirt while I'm at it too, because I was asked to do this as basically a statistics-oriented presentation. I happen to be a co-owner, founder of Rotate 123 and Solo Stats, but this is not a product demonstration. That'll happen later on, this afternoon. This is really for you to understand about stats and how to utilize them. And so the more important background is the fact that I'm a club coach, and I'm a high school coach, varsity and 16th club. And then I've been to a lot of these AVCA conventions now, so I've managed to get my CAP certifications along with it, and I've also done some Golden Square stuff. So taught a bunch of webinars for the AVCA. I really love the organization. They do a fantastic job, and they've been supportive of us. And so I like to give back. So this presentation is really for the event that I'm kind of filling in for somebody who couldn't do this original presentation. Okay, so these days it's all about money balls, all about stats. Kind of don't trust your eyes, look at the numbers. The force will be with you, all that good stuff. The problem with all this good stuff is that I took these seminars too. And then finally started statting about 4 years ago, and when I got home I had all these numbers and I didn't know what to do with them. And it's like, where's that seminar about, what do you do with all these numbers? Other than the obvious things, okay? So that's what we're trying to get through today. So for me, I'd like to get you a little bit more comfortable and get you in a frame of mind about how to think about numbers as they relate to what you're doing today. And so if I can get a little bit of that for a comfort level, then I think it'll make it a lot easier of how to sift through this big pile of data, right? And the other part of this thing is this is not about how to take stats, because there's plenty of those things out there. And in fact, I will point you towards some methods and products for doing it. So it's primarily about interpreting stats. Okay, so let's talk about training time, right? Everybody thinks about the opponent, but really all of our opponents is time, because we all have a limited gym time. And with that, how do you get the most out of that time? So this presentation is about that issue, okay? How do you use statistics to make your time in the gym more efficient, meaning you're picking the right things to drill, and then effective, the things that you're drilling are giving you high returns. The other things that you need to understand are issues around limitations of your team, your own limitations of what you're capable of teaching, and then your competition. So when you get all these things together, then you're in a better perspective about how to utilize the numbers to get the maximum out of your team. So I want to also make sure that you don't have like massive spreadsheets of stuff that you really don't know what to do with. Oh, by the way, all the slides here are available. If you'll email me, I'll provide that at the end of the presentation. Okay, so make that available to you. All right. So one thing that I wanted to do was to figure out what's your frame of mind about looking at numbers. And I think that taking a return on investment, ROI, mentality is a good one. You put out $100, what do you get back, right? For you, it's you spend 30 minutes on a drill, how many points are you going to get in the match? Okay? Think about it in those terms. Because if you do that, I think you'll rapidly look at your drills and say, wow, we're wasting time over here. This wasn't good. Okay? Because there's lots of things that coaches do through habit or tradition or whatever it happens to be, where you're just spending time on the court, bouncing the ball around, and it's not really, there's no objective there, right? It's not giving you a return on the other end of it, sort of generalize more touches. And I don't think that's good enough. I don't think that's a great way to become competitive, and I don't think that's a good way to win. All right, so the other factor about investments is there's the issue of long-term versus short-term. And that's another prioritization thing that I'm going to try to help you with. Okay. All right, so let's talk about like the common stats. So we have this sort of same level of understanding. How many are familiar with the received stats? 0 to 3. Okay, so 0 is an error, 3 is a perfect pass. What's a perfect pass? You decide, right? Yesterday in the setting sessions, they talked about opening up, the perfect pass zone, because just learning to set the ball from like the 10-foot line and running it quick, so that definition is completely up to you. The next one, which is used a lot, of course, is hitting efficiency, and hitting efficiency is kills minus errors over total attempts, okay? And it looks like a batting average number, 300, 0.300 is a good number, typically. And so the following one is kill percentage, which is kills over total attempts. So if you have a 50% kill percentage, that means half your balls scored. Right? You swing twice, you score once. Okay, side out. Side out percentage is really straightforward, really. A 50% side out percentage means that you take 2 serves and you side out once. Okay? So if you're at a 33% side out, you take 3 serves and you side out. Right? So the lower that number, the worse off you are. Typically, high-level competitive teams, college teams, are at about 66%. Okay? So it's kind of an average. For you, it could be real different. I know for me it is. And then point scoring is the opposite of that, which is point scoring is about every time you go up to serve, how long do you hold that serve? How many points do you score? So if you have a 75% point scoring, that means you serve 4 times, you score 3 times. Make sense? Okay. So those numbers you got to kind of keep in your head and think about like how do they relate to the rest of this. Now the good news is all of the side out and point scoring stuff you can get right off the score sheet. So if you don't have the stat programs and all that kind of stuff, literally take your phone, take a picture of the sheet after the match. Okay, and then you can sort of figure it out from there. Because every line item is there, and it tells you how many serves went up, and of those serves, how many points were scored. So you can figure that out. And the one piece of it is that it'll give you point scoring for yourself and for your opponent. Okay? And so in order to figure out your side out percentage, your side out percentage plus your opponent's point scoring equals 100%. So all you got to do is figure out your opponent's point scoring, right, and subtract that from 100, and you get your number. Make sense? Too much, man? Okay, too early? More coffee? Cappuccino? All right. Okay, so the next one. I'm going to start this kind of in the middle. You've already picked your team. You've already gone out and played. Now what do? You got some numbers. What are you going to do? Okay? So that way I don't have to kind of do the beginning part. Now, if you need help around how do I set up my teams, there's a resource that's plugged in here. There's an area called Learn on rotate123.com, and there's a topic called rotation optimization. All right, I did a presentation on that last year. There's also a USAD article on this, and it's a whole methodology of how you grade your players to figure out what kind of systems to run. Right, and I think it's a very helpful way to look at it, and that resource is on the Rotate123 site. Okay. All right, so. Generally, here's kind of the general stat you'll want, right? So it's nice to know sort of there's a concept of plus minus points, which is how many points does your player win and how many points does your player lose, okay? So you should kind of have a general idea of what's happening there. You'll have receiving stats, so how well are players individually passing, how well are they hitting, okay? And then it's really great to get those skills by rotational breakdown. So how's Megan doing in rotation 1 receiving versus rotation 3? Right? Because those things tend to be kind of different, and those positions on the court with their teammates have a big impact. So you can find little places where you can make fixes. By rotation, we already kind of, you can actually figure the by rotation point scoring and side out percentage, again, off the score sheet because it's actually listed by rotation. And then for the team overall, it's nice to know the overall side out, the overall pass rating, and the overall point scoring rating. Okay? And then total digs and kills are kind of nice to have too. Now, all of these aren't critical, because as I go through this, you'll see there's lots of things you can do here without this level of detail. All right. So, step 1. Okay? What's a good number, for any of these stats? And the answer is it depends on your competition, right? Because you can have a team that, averages hitting 300, but who are they playing? Maybe you're the monster team in your league, right? And your league's not so good, okay? The other side of it could be you're hitting 150 as a team. Are you a bad team? No, you're playing in a tough league, and 150, is pretty good. So these numbers are really relative, so it's a little bit tricky to just apply them sort of overall. And then you have to decide as a coach, what's the purpose? What are we trying to accomplish this year? Is this a developmental team where we're trying to get everybody better, right? So you want to get everybody on the court. Are you trying to be locally competitive? So you're not going to the nationals. You're just going to be, you want to kind of do really well in your region, or you're a high school team, you want to do well in your league, but you don't expect to sort of go to the state championships. And then finally, nationally competitive. That makes it tough because now you're kind of on an absolute scale against the best teams, right? So, what number do you need? And so again, depending on your goal, your statistical targets may get higher or lower. By the way, stop me at any time, right, if you have questions, because, I do webinars where I have to stare into a computer screen talking to myself for like a half an hour. It's really very disconcerting, okay? So it's nice to see faces, and, so it's good to be interactive. All right, so the next piece is that the concept of playing context, right? Who are you playing and how do you play in that round? So I was trying to figure out sort of some relative way of measuring this. So as I was kind of pondering the idea, I came up with this notion of like your scoring differential. Okay, so you score 25, your opponent scores 25. So clearly this is all about losing, but it's okay because we're trying to get better, right? You're a dominant team, maybe you don't care about the stats. All right, so it goes from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20. At 20 to 25, you're right in the competitive zone, right? Below that, there's a lot more work that has to be done. And then below that, we have other kind of components there. We have, I give a rough idea of what the side out might look like. And then trying to look a little bit at where you should dedicate your practice time. All right, so let me take the first example. Okay, so anything below 10 to 25, right? Your passing is probably well below 150. Your error rates are probably quite a bit above 20%. Okay? And then, look at the places where you got to dedicate your time. Now, here's the reality. If your error rate in passing starts to get above 20%, your play is completely unpredictable. Meaning, you could sit there and not rotate for 25 points. Because you don't know. You could have a really bad streak. Or you'll have a lot of 6 to 8 point streaks. It's going to be very frustrating. So getting your error rates down on passing is really important as far as sort of your variability of your score. Okay? So that's one number to really keep track of. And that's almost more important at the lower level than your actual pass rate, the quality of your pass. Does that make sense? Confusing? Okay, well, we'll talk more. All right, so you can see that, the key thing here is if you're the weaker team, you need to serve your way out of the problem because you're not going to pass your way out of the problem. I guarantee you that, right? So if you just had your team practice serving 100% of the time, I guarantee you'll do better in your league. Okay? Occasionally you'll have to receive a fault. That might be a problem. But I will guarantee you, if you have tough servers, you will have an advantage to at least score against a really tough opponent. Okay? And they're going to make a mistake. But sooner or later, they'll take a swing because they get cocky and it's loud. Okay, so you have to sit there and pray. Okay? Praying is okay too. All right. So the next group. Now you're starting to get a little more competitive. Maybe it's around, these are guesses again. Okay? These are all rough guesstimates just to give you an idea. Maybe you're passing about 150 to 180. And maybe your error rates are trying to get down below 20. This is good, because now you're getting a little bit more predictable in the way you play. And maybe the streaks will only last 5 points. Okay? And maybe their streaks will be 5 points, and maybe you'll start to catch up. Right? So again, where do you dedicate your time? Well, here, you can start getting a little bit more out of the serve and receive game and getting a little bit more into the hitting game. Okay? So more of an investment in the attacking part of it, and maybe a little bit more investing in the digging part. Now you notice the bottom part, the block, you notice how low that is? And I'll show you some stats as we get down there about why the blocking piece is such a problem. And I see lots of 14s, 13s, 12s, kids jumping up in the air for no good reason, deflecting balls away from their defenders, all that good stuff, and the coaches say they gotta practice blocking. I don't think so. I see a lot of stuff where it's like, you're not practicing blocking because blocking is not like this, okay? Blocking is like this. So I don't know what technique you're practicing there, right? So lots of things to think about relative to where you're going. Finally, the last grouping is you're getting competitive, right? So you're starting out at maybe over 45%, which is pretty good. Okay, let's get to the point where, hey, 2/3 we're back, right? And then, you can start to sort of do things a little bit more evenly, where now attacking becomes a factor, kill rate becomes a factor, because remember, kill rate determines your race to 25. Okay, you want to get to 25 before the other guy does, right? So kills determine that, and at the higher level of play, that's what the key factor is. The receiving parts seem to kind of get, neutralized. Both sides are pretty good at receiving and serving. Now who can make more kills? And then, of course, to prevent them from killing on you, you got to start practicing some defense, and then maybe investing a little bit more in blocking, depending on how good your blockers are. Okay, so let's give an example. Let's take that mid-range team that's losing 15 to 25. Right, they're passing at about 160, and here's the distribution of the passes. Right, so we'll take a simple example, so it's easy to divide. It's 10 passes. Okay, and so you got it's not quite that easy. This is a real-life example, which is typically in a game you receive about 20 balls, around 20 balls. It might be less, it might be more. Okay, and so we got 2 errors, right? We've got 6 ones. Ones are balls that go kind of up in the air. Your teammates have to chase it down, and it usually results in a free ball going back to the other side. Now, if you're a really tough coach, you might, grade anything that's like, not so great but settable, a 1, because you're picky, right? So it's kind of up to you to decide how critical you want to be with ones. Two passes are ones where your setter does get to the ball. Theoretically, they have 2 options. They may not. Okay, depends on how picky you are. And then finally, the 3s are in the pocket, right, where you can run that middle very easily because you're standing close to the net. And here's what it looks like, okay? So this is a pun intended scatter chart, okay? Right, so you notice the big kind of golden zone on the bottom here, right? The little stars are where the ball's going, okay? So the 2 areas up there, and then the 3 areas in the green up there, okay? So the blue is the 2. Does this look about right as far as how you would grade it? Okay. Again, the zones may vary depending on how picky you are, or not picky you are. But there's one key message in this. What do you see? All right. Where are the balls going? Most of them are behind the 10-foot line. Okay. And that's very problematic, because I will guarantee you, a lot of you don't practice setting from back there, and the results of setting from back there, the hitters have to hit from a set from back there. Because those angle changes really affect your hitters, particularly the more novice they are. Right? They're used to seeing a ball in a certain pattern. And remember, all this stuff about volleyball is about sort of pattern recognition. And if the patterns start to get a little bit off from what you're used to seeing because you haven't done 150,000 reps, right? Then it comes out of your scope of ability to deal with that problem. Okay, so if you don't practice it and it works out in the game, it's an accident, not good coaching. Don't give yourself credit. Okay, not because you're cheerful and enthusiastic that they made that play. All right. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, okay, let's look at the fact that 40% of the balls are definitely out of system, right? And then some of you may say that the 2s, the 50% up there, are out of system because you can't run the middle very well from those. Now, it depends on your team. If you're really aggressive, you can jam that ball. Okay? So then it becomes, do you practice 40 to 90% of your volleyball out of system? I don't think so, right? And if you don't be surprised when you go and compete with somebody that you're getting beat up, because this is the state you're in. You're in out-of-system volleyball, it's a little chaotic, and your team's not used to coping with that. And the problem is, you gotta practice what you're gonna play. And most of us have a vision, an idealized vision that's wonderful with palm trees and all kinds of good stuff going on, right? And when you get to the tournament, it breaks down the first 3 balls. And it gets to be completely chaotic. I'll give you one good example of things people don't practice enough. How often do you practice your kid running off the court, bumping the ball over their head? Okay? As a deliberate practice skill. And yet, tournament time, you sit there and you know where that ball's going because, you know, the girl's facing like this, right? And she's facing at the net and it's going out of bounds. And you can see it before she makes contact that she's facing the wrong way. And boom, ball goes out of bounds. Why? Because she's never practiced it. Okay? And you're surprised that, you know, wow, it's such an easy play. She couldn't put the ball on court. Right? And so this is the nature of out-of-system practice. Right? So think about what the conditions are when you actually get there and how much control do you have as a team. Okay, so this is an example of that, which is, you know, you go to a tournament and you're just an observer. Team A's crushing the ball at the warm-up, right? Bam, bam, whoa, bam, impressive. Team B, balls are going out the court, balls are going in the net. They look terrible, right? And who wins? Team B. Why is that? Well, okay, you know, let's look at the whole problem again, right? Where did that coach spend his time? Okay, so first, right, the first one right there, it says, spending too much time and hitting drills where the coach tosses the ball perfectly to the side. Okay, a condition that doesn't seem to exist on their team because they don't seem to go past the ball, right? So, team does not pass very well, team does not deal with out-of-systems play very well, and there are probably too many what's considered coach-centric drills. That's when the coach enters the ball, right? Because a lot of coaches want their practices to be clean, very hygienic, right? Not messy. But guess what? Most of volleyball doesn't look like that, except maybe at the highest levels, right? So if you don't practice what's called randomness, okay, your girls will never get good at randomness, right? So it's very good to get off the court and let the players initiate the play, or initiate the play with something that causes randomness, like a down ball hit, right? Stuff, throw into the corner. Okay, anything that makes your team move and have to do it more like a real game. Okay? You can stop me anytime, folks, so, you know. Okay, so we did the first part, which is a top-level look, right, at where you fit in your competition. And now we're going to start looking at the numbers. So the first area is, by player, you have the right person in the right role. Okay, so you made a decision, you know, Sally's playing middle blocker, Megan's sitting outside, Beth is libero, whatever, okay? So you made these choices, and then you really want to start looking at numbers. So first part is what's called plus-minus points. How many points are you gaining or losing per player? Okay, the next one is looking at the actual stats for a skill. So how well are they serving, receiving, digging, so forth, okay? And so you got to make sure that what you assumed on paper is actually happening on the court, right? Because a lot of times you get fooled by the Moneyball athleticism. You guys, how many people saw the movie? Right? How many read the book? Okay. There's this thing that they call the body. Okay. The body is this good-looking guy, very, very physical, fast, athletic, got a great arm, and you know what? His girlfriend even looks good. Okay. So they were making decisions like that, based on, you know, the recruit's girlfriend appearance, rather than looking at the statistics. So they would never hire guys that were kind of ugly, you know, heavy, slow-looking, but they had a great arm, or they were a great catcher, right? They didn't look at the numbers. So you have to be careful of doing the same thing, because I've been fooled where I had two girls, one really athletic, one who didn't look athletic at all. And then, you know, the athletic girl always looked great going to a pass, but I was watching the ball, I was watching her. Right after I started standing, the two girls were like, holy cow, she's like generating about 30% errors. The other girl, who doesn't think she's doing anything, is about at 5%. Right? Who do you want on the court? Right? The variability thing, right, says the bigger your error rate, the more you're going to be out of control. Okay? So you want people with low error rates for specific skill sets. Otherwise, you know, you're going to be kind of throwing the dice every time you get on the court. Okay? Okay, plus-minus points. So the key rule here is you have to compare players doing like roles, otherwise it's going to be kind of messy. As an example, you cannot compare a middle blocker's plus-minus points to a libero's plus-minus points. The reason is, what?
Different skill sets.
Liberos don't score points typically unless they get the serve, okay? Or unless they're like hitting a lot of down balls or doing crazy stuff like that. Usually they're strictly doing digs, and the place where they get scored is digging errors. Okay, because a dig does not result in a point. it results in the ball being in the rally. Okay? Middle blockers typically don't play much court defense. So the places where they get negatives are maybe a tool off the block. But the rest of it's all plus points because it swings into the court. Okay? So they tend to have high numbers, liberos tend to have low numbers. So you got to make sure you're comparing like players. All right, so let's look at an example here. Okay, so we got, in the yellow we have 2 outside hitters, and then we have 3 middle blockers. And you can see the plus minus points, right? So you can see the first girl, Allie, ends up with a net 1.1. She's got 3.8 earned and 2.4 errors plus 0.3 faults. Faults are the nets, right? That kind of stuff. Okay, per game. All right? And if you compare her down to Madison, who's at minus 0.4, and then Sydney, who's at minus 0.3, you can see that she's doing substantially better. Okay, so she's definitely a good choice. Now the question is between Madison and Sydney, who's a better choice. So you'll have to figure that one out. In the case of the outside hitters, they're both doing pretty well. They're adding, Christina's adding 5.6 points, and then Danny's adding 3.1. Now these 2 girls are playing all the way around, right? So these numbers are really high in my mind because they're having to dig. And when you have to get back there and dig, you know, those negative numbers start to add up and cancel out all your kills, okay? So it's a tough kind of a balancing act here. But this is one way to look at your player's contribution on the court. And you'd be very, very surprised at like who's really giving you points and who's leaving points for you. You do this simple analysis and you may have some second thoughts about who's on the court. Okay? And it's a very simple way to go. All you got to do is, you know, every side out that occurs, just write down what happened. Okay? So if the other side made an error, great. But if your side made an error, it's like a mega digging error, -1. Right? And just make little tick marks. And at the end, you can tell kind of who's where. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so this is the order that typically happens, which is middle blockers only play front, right? Typically have the highest scores. Outside hitters are next. Outside hitters who only play front are just like middle blockers. They tend to have high scores because they don't do much passing or defense. And then the outsides who go all the way around are next, followed by setters. Setters don't get to score a lot of points, but they might do dumping the ball or serving. And then on average, they don't dig as many balls as the defenders do. Okay? So the next person is the DS. The DS is only going in 3 rotations typically. And the person who has the lowest numbers is libero because they're in 6 rotations. Right? So they'll have typically generate about twice as many errors. Now, the good news is the next half we'll look at is the digging side of how many balls are they bringing up versus the ones they're losing. Okay? Okay, serve ranking. Serve ranking is typically done on a 0 to 4 scale. 0 is an error and 4 is an ace. I don't usually do that for a lot of reasons. What I found is that, at least at my level of play, it doesn't correlate that well to results. So it's a coach's judgment about, oh, that was a 2 serve or that was a 3 serve. But you got to watch the chain of events that occur afterwards to see what really happened. And the problem is, lots of times that player that doesn't look too impressive holds the ball a long time. And you're wondering, whoa, how come Sally, who never serves an ace, is got so many more serves than everybody else? Well, point scoring will give you this answer very quickly, because point scoring says, for example, so Madison up there is at 80, but it doesn't really count because she doesn't serve very much. She's only like 5 serves there. But the next girl down, right, is at 58 or something. Okay. Now this team is relatively even, so when your numbers are relatively even, look at the error rates because that's really important, right? The error rates again determine how much variability will you have in your scoring, right, from set to set. So that's one thing to really look at. Okay. So you can see, most of these people are go back there, serve twice, score once. But I will guarantee you, in most teams, particularly lower level play, you'll have a cluster of folks maybe at 50% or below, and some girl will be up at like 60, 70%. And you'll notice at the end of the season, she's served way more balls than everybody else because she's holding the ball. And she might not be that big ace server. Usually, the person I get on my teams who serve well are ones that have a moderate speed ball that floats really well, tends to go deep, and they don't miss serves. They're like under 5% error rates. Right? Those people hold the ball a long time. That's the one you want, right, when the score is 23-23. That girl goes back, it's like, okay, let's check's in the mail here, right? We're ready to go, we're gonna win. Because she's gonna put that ball in, and they're gonna have a hard time with it. They'll be out of system immediately, although they'll think they're in system. So little things happen, like for example, the ball looks pretty good, except if you watch carefully, the center had to break the 10-foot line and set the ball. Okay, once the center does that, I can guarantee you something bad's gonna happen with the hitter. Because the hitter will be seeing the ball from behind the 10, which the team hasn't practiced. The ball will be 5 to 7 feet off the net, she'll take a swing, and it'll either be an easy dig or it'll go out. Right, so these are the little things that you gotta think about with what's happening, with these statistics, okay? All right, so some comments. This is a little editorial stuff, but it's a good place for you to boo or cheer or whatever. Okay, so here's what I see. I think coaches aren't demanding enough in the following areas, okay? Serving balls into the net, all right? Now, serving balls into the net's okay if you're trying to serve really short, but I see a lot of teams trying to boom the ball and it goes in the net. You know, in my gym, what we do? 3 push-ups, maybe 4. If you do 2 in a row, maybe you run around and do more push-ups, okay? Because I want to do the Pavlov thing, right? Which is, the bell rings, you salivate because there's food coming. Well, this is the opposite, right? You serve the ball in the net. You're going to have to do some exercise. Don't want to do exercise, don't serve the ball in the net. Because you serve the ball in the net, what happens? It's over, right? It's way better to serve long. And, if you watch a game where everybody's really excited, 3 long serves, at least one of them is going to get taken. That ball's at least 6 feet out. But people get excited, they jump at the ball, right? So you got a shot. That's already a 30% return, right? Versus 0, ball in net. So that's the first, my pet peeve here. Serving error out of the timeout. That's why the guy called a timeout on you, right? Trying to ice the server. Come on, give me a break. Don't fall into that trap. Practice that in your gym. Okay? No balls go in the net. Just, even if you underhand the serve, you're better off, right? Seriously. Because you just killed your momentum. So that's why I call it timeout. Next one. First serve after a difficult side out. You lost 6 balls. Now you finally got the ball back. And your player goes back there, serves the ball in the net. Crazy, right? Just killed all that work that you did to get out of that rotation. Now you're giving it back to them, and you got to start over again. It's like going back in the ditch and trying to dig yourself out of the mud. Okay, emotionally, it's terrible. And you know how much of a swing game this is, right? So you got to maintain the emotions. Well, one way to do it is not do these kinds of errors. The next one, second or third serve miss in a row. Wow, right? Talk about psychologically debilitating. It's not a good thing, okay? Now, here's the counter to this. I think coaches are too directive, okay? I see all these guys, calling numbers and, stuff, and then I watch the player, and they don't serve to the spot. Right? Or they're so scared they serve to the spot with an easy serve and they pick up a nice pass. Right? And the last one is, they call like something like that or like that, and you know what happens to the ball? Ends up in the net. Okay? So really think about this. I'll talk a little bit about serving stuff later in the presentation, my philosophy around it, because again, I'm all about training time, return on investment, okay? How can you train to get the maximum points with a minimum amount of work, right? Okay, let's go into receive. Now this is a really good topic because, there's lots of things to think about here. You gotta make sure that you have your top players on the court, okay? And here's a rule. And it's never been violated in any of the teams I've had. Now, my sample pool may be small. It's about, 10 different teams that I've studied over the last, I don't know how many years. You're lucky to have 2 good passers. And after number 4, it's a cliff. And I'm talking cliff, okay? So either the rating goes way down or the error rate goes way up, all right? What does that mean? You don't want those people passing if you want to win, or if you want to have predictable winning ability, okay? So think hard about this, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. All right, so who's the best passer? Give me some suggestions here. Anybody? Sally. You call it Sally. Anybody else for Sally? Sally? Anybody else for Sally? Anybody like Sam? All right, so the answer is, right, it depends, okay? If you don't run a quick offense, who cares about passing threes? You know, this is the old iron curtain style of volleyball. Launch the ball up in the air and a 7-footer hits the ball over the block, right? Who cares, right? So it all depends on what kind of system you're running. And if for a fast team running a lot of quicks, I think Sally's your best fit because she's got a lower error rate and a very high 3 percentage, okay? So once again, right, the rate thing in itself is not the total answer. So you gotta look a little bit beyond that, figuring out what's happening to that ball. If you've got a team though that doesn't run quick, it's very kind of, you know, nice even tempo pace and the ball's kind of going up in the air, Sam might be your choice because she's got super low error rate, right? Very few balls. And remember, all of these things, right, are about, take that percentage and multiply, you know, times 20 and figure out how many errors you get. 20% error person loses you 4 points a set. How many games do you lose? 21-25. How many? A lot, right? Those are competitive games. Guess what? Just by making a little switch here, you're going to put yourself in the game because it's not 4 points. It's actually 2 points with rally scoring, right? They get 2, I don't get 2. That's 4 points. Okay, so the margin of error is way narrower than you think, right? So let me get to my pet peeve. Okay. I see a lot of teams using 5 to 6 receivers. I see a team like that, I say, I want to play you because I'm going to win. It's a guarantee. There's no way the 5th and 6th players on the court can pass the ball. There's no way. Okay? This is like setting yourself up. This is like playing Russian roulette, you know, with, you know, maybe, you know, 3 bullets in the chamber. You know what I mean? It's crazy because those guys are going to have like 25-30% error rates. And if you find that person, it's going to be like a big festival for you side. You know, points just rolling in. Okay? You get the bonus. All right? So because you only have 2 and 4 good passers, it's like, you know, you really got to look at this. So for example, even going from number 3 to number 4, you may be going from 10% errors to 20% errors. Okay? That's not a 10% increase in errors. What is it? It's double. Okay? The 10% error person makes 2 mistakes per set on 20 balls. Right? The 20% person makes 4 errors. So you just doubled it up now. There's your point spread again. Okay? So if you're not careful about the error rates with your team on the court, right? This is what's going to happen. Now, if you're not running fast, I would pick the players who make less errors. Just they dive after the ball, just throw up the ball, see something get under it. It's not a beautiful pass, but they don't make mistakes. Right? So that's the kind of mindset you have to go with. Does that make sense? Don't believe it? Sounds good? Okay. All right, so let's go to the next topic, which is hitting. So we talked about hitting efficiencies and all that stuff. The only problem is, tracking this in a game is hard. Because you got to get all these swings and you got to divide by the number of swings. There's a proxy. A proxy is a nice substitute, okay, for it. And it's a number I call net kills per game. Net kills are kills minus errors divided by the number of games that person played. Okay, and the kills minus errors, you do that just by doing end of rally tracking. It's very easy because it doesn't require you to track anything while the game's going on. The whistle blows, and you make a little tick mark on your sheet, you look, put your head up, and you can watch your team hit. Okay, so it's right during the break. Okay? And the nice part of this is the hitting efficiency numbers at some level only are relevant relative to box score statting and ego boosting. Okay? Oh, I hit 350 yesterday. Right? Congratulations, did you win? Right? Only thing you care about as a coach is best hitters on the court. Okay? And I will guarantee you that this number, net kills per game, right, will give you a ratio that will tell you who's best and who's worst because the numerator is the same as in hitting efficiency. If the kills minus the errors are close to each other, that person is going to score close to 0 or maybe even negative. It's the same as hitting efficiency. So it's just a mathematical thing, right? So smaller the number, the worse the hitter, the closer to 0, the worse the hitter. If it goes negative, you got a problem. You're bleeding points. Okay? So in this ranking system, this is real data. And you notice that for the most part it follows, except down at, let's see, there's a flip-flop at Deb and Ann? No, at Ann and Sid, number 5 and number 6, right? The hitting efficiency numbers are a little bit flipped relative to the net kills per game, okay? But it's close enough. Okay. All right, so hitting and level of play. Now this one, you know, is a little bit tough to understand, and I'm going to use a really kind of extreme example that's not maybe valid in real life, but it looks like this. Who's the better hitter? Meg's got a 200. She's got a 60% kill rate. She hits 6 balls as kills, 4 as errors, 10 attempts. Okay. Sam is a 400 hitter, 40% kill rate, 4 kills, 0 errors. Okay. So who's the better hitter? You think so? The answer is, it depends. If you're playing Penn State, you don't want Sam. I guarantee you don't want Sam. You know why? 6 balls left in play. What's going to happen to those balls? You're going to stuff them back in your throat. Okay? So, if you do the math against this, it depends on the team, but it looks something like this. If your opponent can actually return that at a 50% rate, okay? The first example, Meg doesn't leave anything on the court. She's done. There are no balls in play, right? So her numbers stand. She nets out 6 minus 4 plus 2 points. Plus, she got you 6 points closer to 25. Okay, it's a race to 25. The faster you get there, the better. You don't want to play a lot of volleyball, because the longer you're in the court, the higher the probability of you losing. Okay, just get the 25, get off the court, be happy. Okay? It's not about how many rallies you have. Okay? I guarantee you, the trophy doesn't care. Okay? So, with Sam, she left 6 balls in play, 3 came back for points, she's at a +1. Now, the issue is, if you're at lower levels of play, you're going to want Sam. Because at lower levels of play, where the other team like makes 33% kill miss errors, right? They're giving you points there, and then they have a pretty low, scoring rate, you're going to end up in a net more positive position than you are with Meg. But the answer is still, it depends. So be careful about downgrading players who make a lot of hitting errors. Because let's look at how many kills they're making. Okay? And in your condition of play, figure out, what is your opposition doing to you with those balls? Are they a good digging, good attacking team? If it's a good team on the other side, you really don't want to leave too many balls in play. Because every single one of those balls in play turns out to be a problem for you. It's like taking another round of serve receive, except it's harder. Okay? Does this make sense? Okay. All right, digging. Digging is pretty straightforward, right? It's just, how many balls you bring up and under control that your team can now return to do something with it. And, again, you're ranking your players. Now, here's one where digs per game are a little bit better because DSs are only on half the time that a libero is. Libero will have, if they're a good libero, they'll have more digs. The tricky part is the dig errors, because you're going to have some really athletic defenders who will go and touch balls that they won't dig, more than the person who's not so athletic or dynamic, who will be standing there and the ball went over there and be like, not my ball. Okay, so that person who's dynamic actually is getting charged, but a lot of times the person who's dynamic is also bringing up more balls. Okay, so this is one where you really want to look at how many balls are being brought up versus how many errors are happening on the dig side. But you got to look at both and think about the conditions, right? If they're relatively easy hits and you're making a lot of errors, then you got to look at training. Okay, does this make sense? All right, finally, my favorite topic, blocking. Okay, so this is a real team. This is my team. This is a varsity team. Look at the blocks for points per game. 0.77, okay? Now this girl is pretty far across the net. She's 6'1", jumps about 10 feet, right? And when she penetrates, she's like over the net, okay? So she got way more blocks than the next person. The next person is going to be a D1 player. She's an outside, right? She's at 0.43. She's 6 feet tall and also touches 10, right? But she's not in the middle, so she doesn't see as many balls. Okay? Because people don't like to set it to her side, right? Don't feed the opposite. Okay. So you can see how the numbers kind of go downhill from there. Now this is a varsity team, right? You know, this team passes at about almost 240, right? Their side out rate is about 58%, right? In spite of that, with tall players, we don't do much blocking. Right? Now it's important to block zone so your back row, you know, has less area to cover. But scoring points with blocking, it's kind of like, you know, forget about that. Okay? Really focus on sort of positional work, not so much on being dynamic and really trying to score points off of this play. Very few people have the knack, and it is the hardest skill in volleyball. Why? The number of variables, right? What angle is the hitter approaching? How high is the set? How fast is the set? Where am I relative to that ball? Where do I think they're going to hit the ball? Right, there's like 5-6 degrees of freedom here. It's really a hard skill to learn well. And you got to process a lot of information to make the right move. Right? This is like high IQ, high repetition work. And guess what? What do most players do in a block? What do they look at? The ball. Right? The ball. It's like the least important piece of information out there. Right? So it's a hard skill to teach, and it's a hard skill to do well. And if you just have people say, you know, this little taped area over here, make sure you just jump in that zone. So everybody else can kind of be in the right place. Right? That's probably a better way to function than trying to, you know, read and shut off the, you know, angles, all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of work, and it's not going to give you very many points. Right? Okay. So we did all the people stuff, right, as individuals. And now we're looking at rotations, right? So how's each rotation doing? Okay? And so this is side out and point scoring. And you want to make sure when you do this comparison that you're looking at the same people on the court. Otherwise, you're kind of mishmashing, you know, information, right? So you have line up A, line up B. Make sure you're looking at just the same set of people. Right? That way, the data is going to be useful. So it'll look something like this. Okay? So this is receiving? Yeah, receiving. And you notice that of the receives, you know, rotation 4 is the lowest at 44%, right, compared to the others that are sitting above 55 or something like that. Okay? So the first question I always ask, and this is like, okay, well, what's really going on? We'll get to that later, right? But even if you don't know what's going on, this has already changed your practice plan. Why? Right? Exactly. Right. So think about this, right? If we had 1 hour, and you spread that 1 hour of butter over your bread across 6 rotations, what do you get? Right? Little bit of time across your 6 rotations, and you're making your good rotations better? I don't know. Okay? Compared to putting all of it on a little piece of cracker, right? Tasty. Okay? So you're going to think about it like filling in the holes. Okay? Put it all in that little hole. So let's spend 1 hour on rotation 4. I guarantee you that rotation is going to be better. Because an hour is a lot of time. And you're going to see all kinds of things your team's doing that you didn't notice before. And if you had a video, you would have noticed it. You know, but you can see it now and really work on that and make that better. Because if you take that thing out, that's a big run that just happened, right? So that maybe is a 4-point run, you know, rotation or something bad happening there, you know, to cause that particular number to be low. Okay? So again, use the rotational analysis to figure out where you need to focus your time. All right, so this is on the serving side, point scoring, and then here, you know, the rotation 6 low, but rotation 3 and 4 are also kind of the same level. So here again, at least you can split it across 3 rotations instead of 6. You're still doubling up the time. Okay? So this is a great way, again, to get your focus to things that really matter for your team. All right? Okay, so far, what have we done, right? First, we looked at us versus the competition and where to generally spend time, is sort of the types of skills you really need to focus on. Right? The second one is we looked at individuals to make sure that we've got the right players in the right spots and they're doing what we think they should be doing. And then third, we're looking at the rotational information, both side out and point scoring, to make sure that we can work on the weak areas. Okay? So what's next? Well, wouldn't it be nice to go deeper into a rotation so that you can find out exactly what's going on? Now, this part's hard. If you don't have software, you know, an app of some form, it's very hard to get down to this, because doing it by hand tab editing is just brutal. Right? And you got to have a lot of data for this to sort of come out and give you something useful. The good news is there's software that does this for you. So, and I won't see which software does this. So in this case, we look at a sample here, and we see that in this particular rotation, on the error side of it, we have Charlotte with a -3. Okay? So that's a good place to focus, because I know that in rotation 4, Charlotte's an opposite. In rotation 4, where's the opposite? No. She's right back. Okay? Which means she's hitting a back row ball. That's already a hint, right? Maybe she can't hit the D ball very well. So maybe we've got to practice that, because she's hitting pretty well when she's at the net. Okay? So it's an example of pinpointing the problem. So now we don't just do a general rotation 4 practice. We just take Charlotte over and say, hey, hit these balls. Just practice hitting that ball from back here, and make sure you're swinging deep so you're not driving into the net, all that kind of stuff. Right? So it saves you time again. Very, very efficient and effective use of your time. Right? So if you can do analysis at the next level to find out what the plus-minus point scoring is by rotation, by player, then you can really pinpoint what you're going to work on and fix that problem. It's a lot easier than doing general skills. Right? Because a lot of, like volleyball, right, is very, very situationally specific. Okay? Hitting from the left is not the same as hitting from the right. Down ball is not the same as jumping up in the air. Every one of these things is different. Right? It's all of the science behind motor learning, stuff that you get at this conference, stuff I learned. Right? It says that they're all different. So if you don't practice that specific instance, you're not going to get better at it very fast. Right? This way you can focus and get that one thing fixed. Okay? Okay, now, we got all this analysis going on in details and stuff, then you got to sit back and say, whoa, am I really using the right system with my team? Right? You got to step back and really look at it and think about it. And Bill Neville has a great statement. He says, never do tactically what you can't do technically. What does that mean? You probably shouldn't be running ultra quick clicks if your team can't get much above the net and they're really slow. Right? And so there's lots of things like this. So the question becomes, okay, what's appropriate for my team? Well, you can look at the numbers again, right? If you're going to run fast, what percentage of your receives are perfect? And when you run the middle, what's your middle's kill percentage, right? So if your kill percentage out of the middle is maybe above 40 and you can pass at above 50% perfect, maybe you should be running this. If you got a, sounds like you got a big enough player, you got enough ball control. It's a question of, can your setup put the ball up, right? But if those numbers start to fail, you really got to reconsider. You either got to train a lot harder and get those numbers up, or maybe you should just give up that plan. Okay, but the numbers will tell you how far away you are, right? If you're within 5%, 7%, you probably could practice your way into it. If you're 20% out, I don't know, maybe that's next season. All right? Think about the numbers again. It's a real good way to figure out how close are you to the target. There's one other thing I didn't mention, which is when you bring up stats with the girls, okay, and explain it to them, when you bring up the notion of stats with your girls, they will hate it. And then after you explain it to them, all the wonderful things about it, they'll still hate it. Okay? But what they'll quickly realize is you'll get around this whole deal. A couple things happen. Well, number one is the whole coach likes her better than me. Okay? Well, yes, I like her numbers better than her numbers. That's true. Okay? Second thing that happens is, particularly for you with the parent problems, right? I publish all my stats. I do not hold back any data from any player or any parent. You know what happened? Instead of parent come back to me saying, why is Sally not on the court? They come back to me and say, Sally's numbers aren't very good. Can you work with her privately and get her passing numbers up? Right? That's a better conversation. Okay? Now, you have people who will start to argue with the numbers and say all kinds of crazy stuff. Say, no, that's not true. That's not what the number says. So you'll have a little bit of that stuff going on. But in general, full disclosure, at least you're comfortable with it, right? I find it's a better way to go. I'd rather have that discussion, looking at the facts rather than, your emotions versus, my judgments. Right? Okay, so I'm going to look at some specific areas here and, kind of think about prioritization. So the key ones are serves, receives, and systems, okay? All right, the first one, This comes from Hugh McCutcheon, and a lot of coaches have said this who've had international experience. American teams don't practice serving enough. What's the other side of not practicing serving enough? Exactly. Not receiving enough balls because you're not serving enough. Okay? So it's an under-practiced skill, and we get beat up in lots of places when we go international. And so it's something for you to think about in your team. The other thing is, from a return on investment perspective, it's the easiest skill to learn. Why? Yeah, it's a closed skill. What is that? The ball's in your hand. It's not coming from other parts of the universe. Right? You have it in your hand, you control where that ball is going to be when you make contact. Okay? So it's a much easier skill to learn because of that. And tough serving is the easiest way to neutralize a superior opponent. Right? Because you don't need to learn how to pass, set, hit big, and make kills. You just serve the ball really hard and it doesn't come back. Right? And, serving tough doesn't mean you're serving a lot of aces, as I said earlier, right? It could be just causing the other side to be out of the system, right? So think about that in the process of the training. And the other corollary to, not learning to serve tough is your team probably doesn't learn to pass very well, because I've rarely seen a team out there that was a good passing team that also didn't serve like crazy hard, right? You see a lot of teams that pass really badly, and you watch their serving, and it's pretty bad too. It's all over the place. Okay, and I think they just correlate to each other, because unless you, the coach, are going to serve about 1,000 balls, right, and blow your arm out, the players have to do that work, and they should do the work. So they need to get better. So here's one drill idea, right? It's very efficient, and it's very effective. It's called deep to the seams. So basically you're targeting between the players on a 3% receive, right about at the shoulders. The ball should land in the last 4 feet of the court. Now why do I like this serve? Because statistically it's really safe, okay? If you train your players not to serve the ball into the net, but they're still learning how to serve flat, the ball, will end up back there. And what it does is, if you go between the players, it's a hard ball to pass because it's a side ball like this. And the second thing is 2 people are looking at that ball. So if you enter communication on top of a hard ball, your probability of getting something good happening for you goes up dramatically, right? So if you can serve the seams really well deep, you can win a lot of points. And the magic number, and the AVCA had an article just in the last release about serving, and the cool thing is that number correlates with my number. It's 38 miles an hour. Okay? Now, there's a lot of cool stuff in that range. So there's this, he's over here. So we got this. Can you see this thing? It's really cool. It's not a cell phone. It's a pocket radar. Okay? Keep it in your pocket. Check the numbers, right? So go check it out. So that's one way. And the balls start getting over about 40, 42 miles an hour, they usually don't come back, right? So it's a nice kind of set of goals to get. And again, very numerically based. Now, because I know many of you don't have the budget and you can't afford this, there are some cheap solutions, okay? So one of them is you put an elastic band across the top of the net and the last kick mark, about 4 inches off the top. The elastic band is a giant waistband that you tape onto a little climbing thing. Right. And I put a little rubber on the end of the carabiner to keep it from sliding around. Rubber band, cheap fixes. Okay. Put that thing on, put it across the top. They got to serve it underneath that and then into the last 4 feet. Okay, if that happens, the physics says it's got to go at least 37 miles an hour on the U-ball. Right, so you got an automatic little timing device there. Okay, but it's really fun to have a radar thing because the girls get competitive very quickly. Did I get 40? Did I get 40? It's fun. Okay. One more way of providing incentive to the players. I placed 3 chairs in back and just have them pass those chairs underneath the band. Now here's a little game we play. Scoring is always good, right, as a motivation for the team, and it allows them to track and see how well they're doing. So the scoring system is the ball goes above the net, below the band, right, and it lands beyond the chairs. They get 2 points. It goes below the band, above the net, and lands in front of the chairs, they have 1 point, right? If it goes through that space and it hits a chair, they get 0. Why? They serve right at somebody, right? And the rule is you want to make your receivers move, okay? So, 0. If they go above the band and it lands in the court, they get 0. If it goes out the back, they get a -1. If it hits the net, they get a -2, and maybe even a penalty, okay? Extra incentive plan, right? So it's a nice little game you can play, and it really kind of gets them focused on this, and you can keep your leaderboard for that, and so you have a little ladder of like, who's doing well, right? But it's a fast way to dial in that serve, and I guarantee you, it doesn't take many sessions of this happening for you to see a difference on the court. And you're not sitting there directing, doing this, second last, or whatever, okay? Just hit it as hard as you can over there. I guarantee you good things will happen, right? Okay, so the other question that immediately happens is, why not teach other serves? Well, my answer is, if your team can serve over 40 miles an hour consistently to the seam, great. Now you can teach other serves. I guarantee you it's going to take a while before you get that good. Because I've been working with my teams for a long time now, and none of them have gotten like super consistent. Right? They're not scoring 2s every single time you put that drill. Okay? So it's not that easy. Now, if you do have the time and you've got a very, very capable team, great, okay, invest in short serves and invest in corner serves. The problems I have with them are the following. Short serve, right? The ball's got to be pretty much at or inside the 10 to be effective against a decent team. It's hard to put the ball there without putting the ball up. If you put the ball up, now I got more time, right? And so it's a tough serve to do well, and a lot of balls end up in the net in the process. Okay, so it's a high-risk serve that you got to practice a lot of to do well. The other one, corner serves. Corner serves have to be hard to hit the corner. And the problem with the corners is the left or right side corner, the left or right sideline is right there. If you hit the ball slightly off, just a couple of inches, it's going to go out. So about half the ball is going to go out, and the other half will hit the player instead of hitting the corner. So now you made an easy serve. Okay? So as a time investment thing, again, if you got the time, great. And if you got really skilled players, great, do this. But generally speaking, I think you just want to do that same thing hard to the back. Because if you get good at that again, your numbers will show it. Guaranteed. Okay. All right, so the other one is receive stats at practice. Many of you may already do this. It's really simple, right? You get a whiteboard, you make 10 columns, okay? And every player goes out and receives 10 balls. You might want to do it in a 3-person formation, which is what we do. We rotate people along the way. And every time they pass the ball, the coach or even a player can run up and make a little tick, a number mark, right? So first ball was a 1, second ball was a 2, third ball was a 3, whatever. So you get all the numbers up to 10, and the way you can calculate immediately is just add them up, right? So Sally's got 18 points, and you just divide it by 10, right? Because serving is a weighted average calculation, which is actually kind of complicated, right? This method allows you to do it real easy. And the nice part of this little drill is it's on the whiteboard and everybody gets real competitive. And now they're worried about, how well they're passing rather than, oh, that was a bad pass, well, whatever. You don't want that mindset. So what we do in our gym is we really focus on zeros. I say, I don't care about perfect passes right now. I just don't want any errors. So let's try to get to the number we want, which is less than 10% errors. So 20 balls, less than 10%. That's the target in a game. Right? If you can keep it under 10%, you're going to have much better control and predictability in your game. Now, you know how often your offense is going to run. If that number starts to get up to 20 or 30, forget about it. It's going to be completely kind of like, which way's the wind blowing? Okay? So that's a good way to control your offense and receive side and how well you side out. Okay, so receive stats and the quick middle. So here's another way to do that particular drill, which is add a setter and a middle hitter. And while you're statting the passes, see how many of those you can convert to a hit out of quick out of a zone. So let's just say you're just running ones, right? If you're getting 3 or less, you might want to reconsider, because these are not game conditions. There's no pressure per se. Okay? If you start getting 4 to 5, okay, we're getting in the range. If you're over 5, definitely should run this. Right? So it's a quick way to measure how close you are of being able to run a type of offense, because it's coming off of a ball that comes off of a player, not a coach toss, right? This is more game-like, it's more random. Okay? So it's a better way to kind of control the situation, to simulate the game-like situation. And then, over time, you can now start looking at how accurate are you. Right? So how many balls are getting into the three-pass perfect area. Okay, this is about kind of systems you're running. And so, the Neville's axioms, the corollary of that, the other side of that, is basically, you should design your systems around your players, not the other way around. And a lot of coaches have favorite systems that they use year over year. And I find that mind-boggling because your players just aren't that consistent year over year. Particularly in high school, it's pretty random who shows up in the next 3 years. So most of our area of public school, that means you can't recruit, so you get what you get, and then you got to make do. I believe that the 5-1 is way overused. I also believe that the International 4-2 is way underused. And the kind of situations where I think this matters, for example, is you have, that happened to me. I had 2 girls who could set the ball with their hands, fine. They were slow, okay? If I had them releasing from the right back, they didn't get about a third of the balls. So now we're maybe bump setting the ball, right? So we ran an International 4-2. They stood at the right front. They were tall enough to block because they were 5'9" and 5'10", right? So they're effective at least doing that part of the job. They're high enough that if the pass went close to being over the net, they could attack the ball, okay? And then finally, they're close to where the ball is going to go generally, so they didn't have to go more than about 3 steps to set the ball, right? So again, you got to look at the stats, you got to look at the pattern of your play, you got to look at the speed of players, accuracy of the passing, all those things to determine whether or not these things will work. But I think that in general, if you follow Bill Neville's advice, a lot of people are investing in things that are like, we do that because that's what our club does, or that's what we've been doing here for a while. And I'm not sure that's not the best way to win, okay? Maybe it's a good way to learn some additional skills or something, but if winning is your objective, then you better kind of stay focused on that. All right, this is a final thought. There's another factor that I found that's hard. And so you have the skill level and you meet a team, right, and they just crush you. They just crush you because they're so good. But there's another factor beyond skills, okay? It's attention span, right? And attention span is like this. Send a 6th grader to take an SAT test. I will guarantee you, math comprehension is not the problem. Sitting in the chair is the problem, right? And that's the same issue that happens with lower level teams who aren't used to going fast, playing against a team that's going fast, right? It happened to me, because in our varsity league, it goes from like here to here. And I had a bunch of girls who were physically competent, but mentally couldn't stay with the game because they didn't play at that level. They were playing in medium to lower level clubs. The opposition was playing in the elite club, the ones that went to the jails, right? The pace of the play was really fast, and what would happen is, in the middle of a rally, you could see people checking out. They'd have to take a breath. They'd have to go, and then, the ball's there, okay? So these funny little things, this is a mental exercise as well. It's not just a physical thing about being able to put a ball in a certain location or hit the ball hard, right? So the attention span issue is a real one, and so I just try to put up a little bit of a metric again here about how to look at that. So I had this idea, like, okay, we count 30 touches in a rally. You can go across multiple points, right? Just count them with a little stopwatch, okay? Watch a video or something. How fast is that rally going? At a novice level, 30 touches takes over 50 seconds, right? The higher the level of play, the faster the touches happen, because it's just like pinball after a while. In the men's game, right, it's like, because it's like pass it down, pass it down. There's not much rallying going on, right? So if you watch this, you get an idea of what level of attention span is your team, okay? And do you want to ratchet them up some? And to do that, then you gotta, do drills that are gonna make them sort of process and go fast for a long time, right? So, this is kind of the range of things. The other number to look at is how many rotations does it take to finish a set, okay? In international play, it's a really big number, like 16 or 18, I think. And the reason is it's side out, side out, side out, side out, side out, side out, side out. And then a couple of points and then side out, right? So the team's spinning like this the whole time, right? And they only have, what, 6 subs? It's crazy, you know? So as the level of play slows down, like at the real novice level of play, you have the monster server come in, she serves 10 points. And the next monster server comes in and she serves 12 points, right? 3 rotations later, the game's over. You haven't even gone around the block yet, right? So a combination of how fast is the ball going in the rally and then how many rotations are you spinning around will give you a rough idea of how competitive is your volleyball, okay? And with this, the key drill I think of for the attention span piece is do a rotation drill. You know, it's called Columbus or Around the World, where 4 players are rotating after every time the ball goes in, it goes across the net, right? And then the coach injects the next ball immediately. There's no break, right? Ball goes out, whatever, dead ball, chuck the next ball in quickly. And do that for like 20, 30 balls. They will be physically and mentally exhausted, but it'll be a good thing because now their attention span widened, right? And you do this every day, and guess what? You're capable now of focusing in a high-intensity processing situation for longer periods of time, okay? So it's another kind of dimension of focus for your team and another way of improving your team's performance in a really efficient way. And that drill is fun. It's just fun because it's very, very active, lots of touches, and people, if you train them right, they should be scrambling all over the place, hitting the floor, getting balls. Okay? All right, stat resources. Here's some companies. Right, so my company's first. There's Ace Volley, who's been around a long time. They're here. iVolley's here. And iStat Ball is, I don't think they're here, but those are some of the companies. Okay? Just to be fair. And if you want the slide set, come up. I've got business cards and stuff here. Otherwise, you can reach me at kyle@rotate123.com. Okay? You can drop every cards, but I don't guarantee get back to you because I always like making typos and send it to the wrong school or something. Right? And so my next session, talking about the products, is going to be this afternoon at 4:15. It's going to be in room 101, which is down here, the first room in the group. And I'll be demoing the full set of stat, rotation, as well as video indexing. Now, video indexing is incredibly helpful because you go from a number on a piece of paper to, oh, that's what's happening. Right? And that process is way easier than you think. Okay? So come by to see that demo. We have a fair amount of time right now for Q&A, so I'd love to entertain some questions. I'm sure you have at least one. Anybody? Up at you? Come on. No? Oh, yes, there you go.
High school, how many people do you have keeping stats, and how much time at the beginning of the season do you train those people out stats?
That's a great question. Okay. So, statting. I have a statting procedure that I use, and the nature of at least the product I have is it's basically called exit statting or end of rally stats. Right? So that's the what happened when the play ended. Okay? And if you do that in an application, the nice part is it'll give you rotation breakdowns, point scoring, all those things. Right? Then you want digging, and you want hitting attempts. Now what I've done is I create a little sheet with people's names and 2 players. One tracks digs, the other tracks the hitting attempts. Very little has to happen that's evaluational, like you're not scoring how good was the pass. The coach does that. Okay, and the nice part of the end of rally stat is the coach can do that and still coach. And the only other stat that I carry is I rate the first receive, but that's just the first ball, right? So it's the first ball and the last ball, and that's it. And so the players do tick marks on a piece of paper, then I take those numbers and I input it into the system and get a full number. Okay? So it's a nice way to get all your statistics without the problem of dedicating a body who may not show up. And tracking digs and attack attempts is really easy. It doesn't take like hardly any training. In fact, I had no training. The girls were like, I just told them what to do. And I just kind of, had my assistant coaches watch a little bit, and it's like, okay, well, cool. And you know, the other thing about statistics, you gotta remember this, okay? Don't get crazy about being accurate per se. If you miss a stat, it doesn't matter because there's this thing in math called the law of large numbers, okay? If you give a lot of numbers, everything washes out. A 10% error rate in your stats is irrelevant relative to your team's performance. I guarantee you it will all because usually the difference between like each of the players isn't that narrow. It tends to be pretty chunky and big. So, you know, you can afford to get up to almost 15, even 20% errors and still be okay. It's still way more of a guy than not having the numbers and trusting your gut. Other questions? Yes?
In your experience, at one point you broke down the rotations, receive versus serve.
Yep.
The variables, I'm presuming, are far more in receive. When we're looking at serve, is it really mostly just the server rating slash efficiency that you're really looking at, whereas in receiving, you know, pass, the side?
Yeah. My tendency is to get fixated on the receive just because that determines whether or not you get to serve. But when I've looked at the numbers, there's plenty of bad things happening on the serve side that's your fault, not theirs. In other words, it wasn't their aggressive offense, it's something that happened on your side. And one of the things the statistics will tell you is, for example, you may find that a specific player is having a lot of dig errors in one rotation only. Right? So when you dig down into that, you may find out why that's happening. It may be a positional problem. And you know, one thing that I didn't really mention here is there's kind of like two levels of investments that we're talking about, okay? There's one piece of it that's around skill development, which is long-term. But there's lots of short-term things which is around positional issues. And positional issues are twofold, right? One, is the right person playing the right position? And two, are they in the right place? Right? And you'll find that lots of times people are doing little funky things that, you know, you forgot to train. So they're not standing in the right place. Or they're not disciplined about getting back to the right spot in the court. Right? Or you can maybe modify things a little bit because, you know, you have a setter who's a little slow on the release, so when she's in the back row, you know, if you play a rover type defense where the setter's up behind the block and you do a rotation thing where the middle swings out to the right, just to get that person closer to the pass. So little things like that, you know, are tweaks that are easy to teach that could change your point spread again. And remember, the way you get about winning is shaving points one at a time. Okay? 2 points here on receive, 3 points there on serve, you know, 4 points there on, you know, defense. You win. It doesn't take very many points, right? Because if you're losing by, you know, 10 plus, then, you know, you got a lot of training to do from skill standpoint. But if you're losing by something within about 7 points, it's really easy to close that margin if you know what you're looking at. You know, and that's all what this presentation is about, is like finding all those little nuggets and pulling them out and getting to them quickly. Other questions? Yes?
Do you find on your, when you use the rotate 1, 2, 3, you have a spot?
The answer is it depends. So if you're doing strictly serve receive and end of rally stats, the answer is no, because I do it as a head coach. Right? If you start to do more like digs and stuff like that, then it starts to become very helpful to have a spotter. That's why I prefer not to use a spotter. I prefer to distribute the last two as paper tick mark things, although it's a little bit less convenient afterwards. I prefer my coaches to be coaching. So even if I have an assistant helping out with statting, I prefer that person to be watching the game than taking a lot of numbers, because those stats are easy to collect for the players to do that, or even parents. It doesn't really matter. Because I basically back up all the stuff in the video anyway, so, you know, can double check the numbers pretty easily, you know, if it's kind of weird. Other questions? Great, thank you so much for coming. Oh, wait, one more.
Shifting gears slightly, but what other apps are you utilizing during a match?
What other apps am I utilizing? I guess my answer would be nothing. Well,
Are you diagramming or are you free?
oh yeah, okay. That's a good point. Yeah, that's not an app for me, but yeah, because lately I've had the luxury of having an assistant coach who's doing the stat input. Yeah, I do lots of that. If we find a team that's tough, then I'll start diagramming their hitting angles and stuff like that, or track like who on the other side is making receive errors, just to get a better idea of like where the pockets might be, where we, you know, like you got a choice of serving left side or right side, right? It's good to know kind of which is the preferential side, things like that. But yeah, those are additional things that are very helpful. doubt about it. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Kind of to go along with what he's saying.
Huh?
One easy thing that I started doing was I just get one of my parents to go behind the defense of the opposing team. I have them take a picture with their phone as we're hitting.
Right.
And they text me the picture, and then I have the diagram of their defense right there.
Yeah, and then you can pick up their signals and the coach's thing and
Yeah,
get that real time so you know where
it's
it's.
great.
It's like stealing signals in baseball, right?
It's great.
Yeah, I like that. Now, that is one thing, that is another thing that actually probably do that more than anything else, which is make sure to understand what defense are they using. Are they doing a typical perimeter? Are they rotating? Are they doing some hybrid of those two things? That's really helpful because I like to call those things to the players and make sure they understand where the option spot is. If they can't take a big swing, they're going to roll it to some three or what. Yeah. Okay, thanks so much. And if you want brochures, cards, whatever, right here.
Yeah, you don't have to. I don't. I just, yeah.
Sit there for a while. Yeah, said you're maybe from your course. Maybe we can do it Friday afternoon, or Saturday.
That's camera, that's video. Pictures on video. How are you?